Quite a bit I want to talk about tonight. First of all, you might have noticed that on Monday night I did a promotional video for Typewriter. I typed for an hour on a private track for them. And I didn't get into many of the races I tried to get in because so many people wanted to take a crack at me. I wanted to go in a private track to give a lot of people opportunities to race against me who ordinarily wouldn't. Although, as it turns out, it ended up coming down to who could enter the races fastest, which usually comes down to pressing Control-Alt-K, which is something I didn't even know about until that night. And I tried it, and I still didn't always get in because there were 50 people trying to get in races that had a maximum of 10. But so only the really fast people could come in anyway, and it kind of failed. But yeah, I'd been planning this for several months. I'd been in talks with Typewriter for several months to do some promotional work for them. I'm going to do an hour on Typewriter every week and record a video for them to place on their channel, which they'll edit out however they please. And they're also going to include excerpts of my book on Typewriter's blog. You remember that video I did in either June or July? It must have been called New Content Ideas. Yeah, I said that I was going to suddenly pivot to doing mostly Typewriter videos. That was because Typewriter was talking about sponsoring me even then, but I wasn't allowed to say anything at the time. And they wanted the vast majority of my races to be about Typewriter. I mean, I feel really bad about that video because the way it comes off, it was as if it was my own decision to suddenly pivot to Typewriter, and then my next several videos, if you'll notice, I was typing all over the place on other sites. The Ultimate Typing Championship site, TyperX, Monkey Type, Keymash. I was doing basically everything but Typewriter, so I was not actually doing promotional work for them at the time. So I mean, I know you have to notify YouTube if you were actually paid to make a video, but I do find that kind of cheesy in retrospect, since I suddenly decided I was going to pivot to Typewriter when it may not have entirely been my idea. And what made it even worse is some of the comments I was getting, like looking at that video, New Content Ideas, Titanium Tendons wrote, I can really tell you talk to the audience without putting on any kind of an act for the camera. Well, I didn't put an act for the camera, that's true, but it was still the most insincere video I ever put up, and I felt really bad about that. Anyway, the deal I ultimately made with Typewriter is one that is I feel a lot better about. Uploading videos for them to put on their channel while leaving my own channel independent, so I can put whatever I want on that. And I think that's a better deal than what I was previously going to do. So I'm going to continue to put whatever kind of videos I want, and those won't always be typing videos either. But that seemed like the best compromise. I was mainly doing this, I think, more to get some of my book excerpts out and see if that can help me attract a conventional publisher, because I do want to publish conventionally more than I want to self-publish. I'd like to see my book in libraries if that's possible. I'd like to have a professional editing job if that's possible. I mean, I don't trust myself to edit my own work. Who would? But I don't know if there's going to be interest or not. I wouldn't be surprised either way. So yeah, there's that going on. I just finished a chapter of my book. I believe the night before that, where I talked about the famous television era typists of the late 20th century. I talked about Barbara Blackburn and Ron Mingo and Cortez Peters Jr. and Michael Shestov, and I talked about the winners of a couple more obscure competitions in the 80s and 90s that I uncovered too. I don't yet have the Typey Award nominations determined yet. I have not heard back from one of my panelists, Penguin Typer. I'm still going to give him a day or two, maybe a couple more days after I release this video. And then there are a bunch of tiebreakers. There are tiebreakers in about 9 categories right now. So there are a lot of tiebreakers to go through for my remaining panelists to determine who the ultimate 2 choices for each of the other categories are before I open up to the fans. Next. Okay, just today, it seems like it could have been yesterday, but I think it was today. There was this new Discord introduced for a content creator championship, where a lot of YouTube typing creators have signed up to compete for a contest. Maybe I'll have to reopen Tendon's video. I'd rather not while I'm doing my own. Alright, yes, people are competing for Nitro Type cash. First place gets $50 million in Nitro Type money. Second place, $25 million. Third place, $10 million. Fourth and fifth place, $5 million. And people will be placed in categories based on average views per video, the number of subscribers gained, and the total number of views based on Social Blade. I've just been looking at Social Blade myself in the past couple of weeks. It does seem to be a pretty cool site. Obviously, John is going to win this competition because the algorithms like him, and his videos are breaking bigger than any of the other typing YouTubers. So John is obviously going to win this. I don't really care much about the Nitro Bucks. I don't visit Nitro Type very often. It's not my absolute favorite site, although I don't dislike it. But I saw a great opportunity here for a kind of solidarity, almost like a labor union or something, for the competitive typing YouTubers, and I want to get in on that. The cross promotion opportunities between people's channels is what interests me here. I mean, I've already been doing that a little. Like, I named most of the major typing YouTubers onto my panel for the Typey Awards. I added John, I added Penguin Typer, Titanium Tendons, Speed Typing, and Ace Typer. Those are the biggest 5 as far as I can tell, besides myself. If there are any people I left out, well, I'm not sure if there are, but I'll probably get to know them when I'm in this group. Hopefully we can all cross-promote each other's videos enough that we can all increase each other's subscriber counts more than we could do on our own. And that's why and that's what I sort of meant by a union there. Maybe technically it would be more like a cabal or something, but either way, I'm not interested in the prizes, but I am probably still going to enter this competition just for the promotional activity, the promotional opportunities this would provide for my channel as well as for other channels, which I see this being a very good idea for that reason, rather than it just being every man for himself. I still have 3 chapters left to write for my book. They are the first 2 chapters of the book. The first chapter is going to be about the invention of the typewriter. I'm going to talk about several of the typewriters that were invented before the typewriter that Christopher Latham Scholes invented. His was not the first typewriter, it was just the first typewriter that was mass distributed and the first that was called a typewriter. There were a lot of typewriters invented. This one book I had estimated that there were about 50 before Scholes even got off the ground, but none of them were able to be marketed. Scholes didn't even invent the first American typewriter. That was invented by William Austin Burt, I believe his name was, and he called his invention a typographer. That's basically just typewriter in Latin. So the idea was not new, but being able to successfully get it made and mass distributed was. That's usually what you'll find with inventions. I mean, whenever there's something that has a supposed listed inventor, almost invariably there will be several scientists or technologists or gearheads or whatever working on the same thing at the same time, and it's just whichever one happens to catch fire. It's rare that something is invented out of nothing without building on others' innovations. So success usually goes to whoever first mass distributes something or popularizes something rather than who actually invented it. I mean, this is a line I'm going to have in my book, and I think I've already used on YouTube in the past couple weeks, but Bill Gates didn't invent the operating system, Steve Jobs didn't invent the graphic user interface, and Elon Musk didn't invent the electric car, but they're going to be the first people's names anybody thinks of when it comes to those innovations because they were the first to sell them to a mass public. So that's going to be one chapter talking about the invention of the Remington typewriter, Christopher Latham Scholes model, and the mass marketing of that. The second chapter is going to talk about the other major typewriter companies and their foundations, and the history of the typewriter industry after other typewriter companies got into the game. So I will be talking about Calligraph and Royal and Underwood and L.C. Smith, and probably the Typewriter Trust that several of those companies formed, which is actually how the QWERTY keyboard took over and became the main standard. When there were a bunch of rival typewriters in the 1880s, they all had different layouts actually, but it was when 4 or 5 different typewriter companies decided to form a typewriter trust that they all decided to agree on the QWERTY layout as a means of keeping other competing typewriters out, and that became the de facto standard as a result of that. In that second chapter, I will also be talking a bit about the very first typing contest of the 1880s and 1890s. I will be talking about the contest between Frank McGurran and Louis Traub in 1888, which is usually recognized as the first typing contest ever held, but I've found evidence that it actually wasn't, that there were a few before then, but just very little is known about them. The McGurran-Traub contest is the one that really captured the public's attention and led to all the other ones in the early 20th century. I know very little about the 1890s and early 1900s period at all, post-Frank McGurran, pre-Rose Fritz. Almost all the research I did and the thousands of newspaper articles I went through were all for that period from 1906 to 1946. I still have research to do on that era in between, in like the 1890s. I don't know very much. However, I still don't think there was very much typing action going on in that decade. I don't think there were very many contests being held, so I don't think that's going to be a lot of research, nowhere near as much as the early 20th century was, I suspect, from what I have seen. And then I have a chapter about international typing that I have not finished yet. It's going to be mostly about intersteno, but I'm going to talk about other things as well. I'm probably going to talk about some of the international typists who competed in the North American contest in that chapter. Probably. I haven't made up my mind on that. And I am going to talk about the Japanese Real Force contest, which has become a pretty big deal in recent years, and one of the biggest prizes in typing in the last few years. I think the winner of that contest gets 10,000 yen every year, and that's about $1,000, if I recall correctly. There's still a lot I don't know about intersteno, especially the early champions, because I am subscribed to a couple of U.S. newspaper archive sites, but I am not subscribed to any European ones. And very little, there was very little press about intersteno outside of Europe for most of its history, maybe even still to the present day. I think with the advent of the internet, it's caught on more with people outside of Europe, but it's hard to research like the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s intersteno typists. So I wrote to the four-time champion Helena Matuskova, but she has since gotten married, and her name is, I believe, Helena Zaviachova, because she merged her name with that of her husband Yaroslav Zaviachich, who is the leader of the Czech delegation, and they founded the Zavs school together, which trained most of the world's great Czech typists. And typing is a serious thing in the Czech Republic. They dominated at this for years. Well, she dominated intersteno for quite a while and won 4 consecutive championships in 1998, 2001, 2003, and 2005. In 2003, she set the fastest typing speed in intersteno history, typing in Czech at 955 characters per minute, 191 words per minute. And I asked her if she had access to a lot of historical information about the typists before her. She has not gotten back to me yet, so I think that's going to be the chapter I do last. I think I'm going to do the chapters about the history of the typewriter next. But I had planned on finishing by December 31st, and I don't think that's going to happen. I'm a chapter behind, and that would require getting 3 done, and I'm also planning on doing all this video content as well, and that's kind of insane. I am probably going to finish the rough draft in January, it feels like, and then I am going to start pitching it to agents to try to get it sold. However, I'm already thinking about the content that I'm going to do after my book is done. I'm thinking about keeping my Patreon and doing something entirely different with it. I would want to get rid of my current gold, silver, and bronze tiers, and I'm thinking about doing separate Patreon levels based on video production, and maybe doing a $1 tier for access to all my typing videos a day in advance, and another $1 tier for access to all my auto racing videos a day in advance. I know I haven't done any auto racing videos yet, really, but I'm planning on it. I'm planning on expanding and doing some auto racing statistics work like what you see on my site, Racer Metrics. I got very little attention there. There were very rarely ever comments left on my Racer Metrics columns because they were very long to read, and I got very little traffic. I think I have a lot more people following me here, so I'm thinking about turning a lot of that sort of research into videos. And then I might charge $2 or $3 to give early access to all videos, and then either like $3 or $5 to do a title card at the end, or, well, it'll be a credit card actually. That sounded stupid. A list of credits where I would list a slide with all my patrons' names in that category, and I'm thinking about, if Patreon will let me do this, having all my current gold tier subscribers immediately entered in to be permanent patrons in the new model, and for $0, not have to pay anything. They get grandfathered in. I don't think I'm not sure if you can do that. I don't think you can, but I'm going to try if I do this. And I would grandfather all my silver and bronze typists, if I can do this, into having automatic access to my typing videos a day early. Give them something, because I know I have not produced enough content besides the chapters itself, and the chapters haven't been going as quickly as I'd hoped, although I'm only one chapter behind still. I am planning on going seriously into video making in a way I haven't yet. Like, when I have my display capture up on OBS, you can see the OBS window at the start and end of my videos, or sometimes I check it sometimes to make sure I haven't lost the recording or whatever, and I know that's really tacky and unprofessional, and a lot of things about my videos are unprofessional, especially since I do them mostly extemporaneously without having them scripted, and also because my visual design is always terrible at everything I do. I want to start making more serious videos with, title cards and jump cuts and talking over images like a slideshow, like the really good YouTubers do. There are a couple of people who have really influenced me in this regard, and in a future video that I'm also planning on doing in the next week or so, I'm going to do a shout out to all my personal favorite YouTubers. I've mentioned this already, but that might take a while because I might want to integrate video in. But anyway, I wanted to ask my followers, and I've been asking a lot of people this over the past week or two, what kind of video editing software should I get? I mean, I've tried to edit videos in Windows Movie Maker, and I can already see how pathetic that is, because whenever I try to splice videos on there, it always crashes, and it never ends up succeeding in actually getting multiple videos together. I was trying to do that with some of those Scrabble videos I put up, which got cut in 2 pieces because I turned the camera off when turned the recording off when my mom came out or whatever. And I know there was little interest there because it seems like my Scrabble videos generally got less interest than anything else, but I want to make serious, professionally edited videos, and I know that requires a lot of processing power. I'm going to go into my control panel here and look up what my processing speed is. I know it might be rather slow for this, although I would always record these sort of videos rather than stream them. I have 4 gig of RAM and a 2.66 gigahertz processor. I mean, we've always been getting refurbished computers, so this one is probably about 8 years old. I can probably do stuff on it on some editors, but I was thinking about immediately splurging and going for Adobe Premiere because I know that is considered the best one, but if I'm just a beginner at this, maybe I should start out with something free to see how well I do. Open source to see how well I do. And also I think a program like that would load faster. I have Adobe Photoshop Elements installed on my computer. I bought that on Black Friday sometime when I was really broke, and I did get some use out of it. I think I made my Racer Metrics logo in it. I made my current SeanRona.com logo in it. The former is good, the latter is bad. But that runs so slowly, it takes like a minute to open or something. So I figure anything Adobe like that, Adobe Premiere, would probably be similarly slow to open. So I'm wondering what sort of app I should use. And I've been asking around. And I'm trying to get like what a good consensus is, because I want to start editing videos soon, maybe even before my book is done. I've been planning a lot of different kinds of videos for next year. I've been thinking about doing some kind of This Week in Typing History, where I try to come up with the most important event in typing history for each day of the calendar. I've got about half of the days filled out already, but it's going to be hard for some of the other ones because there haven't been that many championships out there, obviously. And I've had to go into some quasi-related things that aren't really related. Like I've included some texting competitions on this calendar, but they were on QWERTY keyboards, so I figure it sort of counts. And some history of computers and keyboards per se that doesn't really have much to do with competitions but would still be of interest. And I'm thinking about like getting the right images for that and doing a video like that a week. And I think there might be a lot of interest in that, and it'll be a way I could branch out from people doing the day-to-day Nitro type stuff, where obviously I wouldn't be very distinguished. I mean, also I'm planning this awards show, and I want to be doing all sorts of weird historical things. I have this idea where I'm thinking about doing a video on the best typists of each decade from the 1880s to the present day. Now, obviously, I don't know who the top typist of the 2020s is, except that I know it's probably not going to be me. But I'm surprised how much footage there is for a lot of the typists of the 20th century. Like even typists like Albert Tangora and George Hosfield, typists you wouldn't think from the 20s and 30s, they have footage on YouTube. And I want to see if I can get all that together into one video that I would try to make a half hour or something. I want to get into professional video making after the book is done, more than I want to get into typing, honestly. I want to do, in the 2020s, I want to do something more like what John is doing than like what Czech is doing. I had a nice long run at the top in typing where I probably won't ever be forgotten as a competitive typist, and now it looks like 20 or 30 people are going to jump past me in the next couple of years, and that's fine. But if I can take my success from before and pivot in this direction, I want to do something more creative. And yeah, I think I really want to do serious videos. I've done 100 videos, and I mean, I joked in the chapter I just released that my production values made Ed Wood look like David Fincher. I watched the movie Ed Wood. I never watched any Ed Wood movies, but I think it's a funny joke. So now, after that half hour has been completed, the real reason I wanted to make this video, and this was something I was planning on a while, was I wanted to collect all my typing gear together and show it off on camera in one video. I wasn't able to find anything. I wasn't able to find 2 of my shirts, some of my inner steno medals. I wasn't able to find my name tag from the first Ultimate Typing Championship, although one of the shirts I wasn't able to find today I did wear on a previous video, and I wore my name tag during the second Ultimate Typing Championship. I wanted to have the exact same outfit on that day, and I did. But I've collected a lot of stuff over the years. Shirts, medals, books, keyboards, and I wanted to show all that off. Like, open my typing swag bag. I hate the word swag, but I know a lot of other people like it, and not all this stuff could fit in a bag. Obviously, it would take like 2 or 3 boxes, but I figured people would be interested in seeing some of the stuff I've shown before, and some of it I haven't. But anyway, I am wearing 3 shirts right now, all typing related, and there's this one from the Cincy Typing Championship, Cincy Typing Challenge. I have worn it on recordings before. That recording where I thought I broke Michael Shestov's numeric typing in 5 minutes record. On the same day he did it, by the way, he got 801 numbers in 5 minutes on April 2nd, 1996. And I got 811 on April 2nd, 2020. But I was just talking to Shestov the other day to confirm some stuff I'd written about him. I was talking to him on Skype, and he told me that he had apparently gotten a score of 840 2 years ago, so I did not actually break Shestov's current record, just the last one listed in the Guinness Book. So at some point I'll be trying that again, I guess. But you've seen this shirt before. I beat McGurran from the Cincy Typing Challenge that had that monstrosity called the True Grip that people typed with the left hand on top of it and the right hand underneath, like this. Well, yeah, that didn't show well, but... And I wanted to do, like, the reverse of that guy who was a YouTube meme about 12 years ago or 15 years ago or something, who wore 155 shirts, one on top of the other, who was featured in that Weezer video with all the other famous YouTube stars. So I wanted to wear all my typing shirts at once by being a goofball. You hear some jingling, and I'll explain that later. This is the Das Keyboard shirt. I won from them by qualifying for the final round of this year's Ultimate Typing Championship, and underneath that I have the one from 2010 that you've all likely seen many times. And in addition to that, I am wearing a whole bunch of my intersteno medals, which I don't think I've ever shown on here before. I won the multilingual championship 3 times, in 2011, 2012, and this year in 2020. So I won gold medals for each of those years. And I was second in 2018. and third in 2010, so I would have won medals those years also. And in the mother tongue contest, I won. I won in 2010, 2011, 2013, 2015, 2016, and 2018. I won it in 6 times. I finished second in 2020, and I think third in 2012 and second in 2014, if I remember right. And I was disqualified in 2017 because I posted that video. The year I got my highest score ever because I posted that video on YouTube before the contest had ended, and I was disqualified. And in 2019, I didn't enter. But anyway, I don't even know where a lot of the medals are. I have too many of them, and I have too much clutter. But I gave one of my medals from one of the years I did English only. I gave one of my medals in the hospital to Hunter Schaefer when I saw him there. So I know where that one is, but I don't know where most of the other post-2012 medals are. But here is what they look like. I have all the ones from 2010 to 2012 on. I had them on top of one of my Math League trophies, and I wanted to show them here. Okay, these are the two 2010 medals. This would be the bronze for multilingual and the gold for mother tongue. In 2011, I became the first person, and I am still the only person, to win the Intersteno Mother Tongue and Multilingual Championships in the same year. And they look the same because it's the same medal. They were both for the Paris contest. They wanted me in Paris badly. I was at the height of my unemployment then, and I could not even remotely afford to go. I haven't even been outside the United States in my life. I haven't been outside the northeastern United States in my life. Virginia is the farthest south I have ever been. It was northern Virginia where I was born. I was born in a Washington, D.C. suburb. And I have a bronze medal for 2012 and a gold. And I've shown this before from the Ultimate Typing Championship where I won the second place plaque. But I mainly wanted to show off the books and the keyboards this time because there was one person who wanted me to go through all the keyboards I had and show them all on a recording, and I remember that from months ago, and I'm finally getting around to it now. Anyway, I have bought or received a lot of typing books over the years. This one was given to me, a book on the 125 years of Intersteno. It was written by John Paolo Trivulzio, who ran the Intersteno organization for many years, and he managed to get this out like a year before he died. It's more of a history of the organization than of the contest. There's a section about the contests in there, and I did get a lot of information about the history. I now know that the typing contest started in 1955, and originally electric and mechanical typewriters competed against each other, but then they had separate divisions, and then they had a separate division for electronic typewriters, which are like word processors, which you could edit, and then eventually they got rid of the other categories once typewriters went out of vogue by 1995 and just did a computer category. They also have biographies of almost all the important people in Intersteno history and various documents from the organization. There are some nice pictures. I'll All right, from the Paris conference I didn't go to. There you go. Very, very glossy stuff. Pictures look nice even on there in that bad resolution. I am mentioned in here once with the right on the bottom there with the winners of the internet contest. And this has been very useful for the chapter I'm going to write about inner steno, although there's still a lot of information I want that was not in here. There's a lot I don't know, and there was a lot more focus on like the leaders of the inner steno institution and not as much on the successful typists, which I was more interested in. But I'm going to see if I can get some more information on that. That might end up having to wait until a later draft, I think, because a lot of the current inner steno people don't seem to know a lot about the 1960s and 1970s typists either, since most of them weren't there at the time. This well-loved book, very ripped on the back, and it was not when I got it, but that's how much I looked at this. The Wonderful Writing Machine by Bruce Bliven. Highly recommended. This is very entertaining. A history of the typewriter through the 1950s. So since it was written in the mid-50s, right about the end of the glorious heyday of mechanical typewriters, this covers most of the history of mechanical typewriters. Now, the guy is biased because he was working for Royal when he wrote this, so he gives the Royal typewriters a bit too much credit, and Remington and Underwood typewriters probably not enough. And he also made some factual errors in his history of typing competitions, but the writing is so fun, and the anecdotes he tells about typing's place in the culture. That's what this book is great about, how it impacted the culture more than specific facts about the history. And I want to do something sort of like that myself as well. And he has some very nice pictures of old-fashioned typewriters like that. Or the quote-unquote literary piano that inspired the invention of the actual typewriter. Imagine if we were still calling them literary pianos today. This typewriter was a wheel. The search bar just popped up. All right. That's why I couldn't see myself or the image. Yeah, that typewriter was just a wheel. There are all sorts of great pictures in here. I'm not sure what access I could get to them. It's hard for me to tell which of these are in the public domain and which of these aren't. I know that almost everything that has been published in the United States through the year, it was either 1924 or 1925 as public domain, so I probably would be able to use some of these pictures because I think some of them are indeed that old, but here's what typing contests looked like in the 20s. All those guys showing off their hands and their trophies. There's some picture I'm looking in here about how people actually drew art with typewriters. That's what I'm looking at. And I'm not finding it. Oh, this should be funny too. To people today. Aligners have a secret 7-word sentence for testing typewriters typing. It's not the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog, nor now is the time for all good men to come to the aid of their party, which was the most famous typing sentence in the 1800s, but the meaningless and yet provocative Amaranath Sase Susos Orinoco Initiation Secedes Uruguay Philadelphia. That's what people used to test how the typewriter was working, and that seems funny now because the name that Izanagi is using right now is Amaranth, just with one fewer A. I know that's an actual word, while the Amaranath is not. This one's funny. Royal Typewriter's biggest promotional stunt was throwing box typewriters from the air via parachute to prove how durable they were and how they could survive the landing, and almost all of them did. The pictures are probably better than the writing is, but the writing is still very entertaining. Here's Albert Tango, the best typist of the 30s, if you haven't seen a picture of him yet. I didn't entirely find what I was looking for with making art out of typed documents, but it was well worth the money I spent on it. I think it was only like $22, which for a book this old and good is quite good. I mean, there are new books that sell for more than that. This one, The Typewriter and the Men Who Made It by Richard N. Current. This one might be even better. It's not as funny, it's not as entertaining, but it is a more accurate history of the typewriter, and it's still well written. He basically stops in the 1800s and doesn't talk about like typing competitions or anything, but this is probably where I'm going to get most of my material for the opening chapter about the history of the typewriter, because it's probably considered the best history of the typewriter. I'm still going to get more information elsewhere, and he has some good pictures too. Current tended to focus on pictures from ads and especially articles in Scientific American. For example, this was one of the first typewriter ads. This might be an ad for the first typing championship ever held. Remington was challenging other typewriter manufacturers to compete against them in competition in December 1887 for $1,000, which is an insane amount of money for back then. Yeah, I think the other book had better pictures, but this had better writing, even if it was less amusing and more historically accurate. Here's one of the first typewritten letters ever. Mark Twain, as I revealed in my trivia video, was probably the first celebrity to ever buy a typewriter, and here is what a printed page looked like. This is Mark Twain's first writing on a typewriter. I don't know if you can really see it. Okay, that looks pretty good. He wrote that to his brother, but he found it so cumbersome to use it, he didn't use it himself. He did have faith in the typewriter as an invention, though, and he hired typists to type his manuscripts immediately after that. He said the first typewritten manuscript ever was Tom Sawyer, but later historians concluded it was probably his next book, Life on the Mississippi, and he misremembered based on the dates and so on. But the first typewritten manuscript was definitely by Mark Twain. That is agreed upon by everyone. This is Typewriting Behavior by Augusta Dvorak, the 500-page tome that had more information on the mechanics of typing than anything else I've ever read. It is amazing. I don't agree with Dvorak a lot on the layout he invented, but he was decades ahead of his time in understanding how typing worked physically, mechanically, mentally, in a way that even the top typists of that day did not understand. I mean, for the most part, I feel like most of the great typists, including me until a couple years ago, did not really understand what we were doing or how we trained ourselves very well, and were saying a lot of stuff that wasn't very well informed because we hadn't really done scientific research on typing. Dvorak, even though he was not a great typist, and I've read somewhere that he didn't even type at all, he seemed to understand how it worked mentally and physically. He was like the first person to understand that the building blocks of typing are two character combinations. You don't think in terms of letters, you don't think in terms of words. You think in terms of mastering every combination of two letters on the keyboard. That is possibly the most effective way to process. Always having your next finger in the correct position for the next letter you have to type. And I don't think enough people think of it that way. And that is one of Dvorak's biggest insights. Another one, I discovered by myself that I type one and only one word ahead of time, so I don't remember too much, but I also never slow down. That's almost exactly what Dvorak said in his book, and I've never seen anybody else say that except for me and him. Dvorak recommends going a word and a half ahead. Same thing. A lot of the stuff I feel like I discovered by myself that was against the conventional wisdom actually matches Dvorak's wisdom. I was amazed at some of the stuff in this book and when he wrote it. There's a lot of stuff that didn't age well, like typing's importance in the workplace. There isn't one anymore. The book was connected to a scientific management era where everything was being recorded to create more efficient workers in the workplace. Now this is actually making a huge comeback now with social media, anti-social media companies collecting data on people, and corporations trying to find new ways to make their employers more and more efficient with no additional increase in income. So this is making a comeback, but it's something that scientific management is not something that anybody really liked, and I don't get the sense that Dvorak had any sense of humor whatsoever. He is stone cold serious. It can be a boring read, but a lot of the stuff he discovered here is amazing and closer to the truth than what I think most of the 20th century typing champions were saying. I definitely recommend all three of those books if you can find them anywhere. Oh, and the other great one is this, The Typist's Vademecum by Margaret Owen, also released earlier as The Secrets of Typewriting Speed. This has no illustrations or anything, but she has great wit, great prose. This is fun to read. Um, she can even be kind of snarky. I mean, my favorite quote when she was talking about speed contests was this. It is now 2 weeks before the event of the year. No matter how accustomed we have become to staying up late, dancing, skating, theater parties, or any of the other mild dissipations of which we are all so fond, for these 2 weeks we will be in bed at 9 o'clock. Mother used to dose me up with a nerve tonic, but now I find that the only tonic I need is plenty of sleep. Get slept out, in other words. Then there is something else that I have never before breathed to a soul. I say to myself over and over, dozens of times a day, I am going to win. It reads funnier when you read it than when I read it, probably, because I have bad delivery, but she has a good writing style that, even though this was written 100 years ago, it's still funny. And it's pretty informative too, and you can find it. You can just Google The Secret of Typewriting Speed, and it's in Google Books because the book is now in the public domain. You can see all of it, except there's a bit in the end here about training people to be secretaries and how to do work in offices like copying and duplicating things, and how to write specific types of documents like legal documents and business specifications and manuals and the like. But eventually typing and secretarial work became two entirely different things, but at the time they were closely aligned. As you can tell by these two books, The New Expert Typewriting, this is the book that was written by the first typing champion, Rose Fritz. And Brief Typing, this was co-written by George Hosfield, the 10-time champion. These books were only interesting in that they showed what typewriters looked like at the time they were written, which keys were in certain places. Other than that, they were completely boring. They're just books of drills. There are better drills available online. There's not much reason to go back to these unless you want to see what old keyboards looked like. So yeah, I don't really recommend them. The Cortez Peters Championship Typing Drills. This is more famous. In fact, it might be the most famous typing book ever written. Cortez Peters Jr. might have been the best typist ever. In fact, if you ask me, I would probably say he was. He typed 225 words per minute on an electric typewriter in 1976, and I think that is better than anybody else has ever done. However, it's very hard to verify a lot of his stuff, and Cortez Peters Jr. had a nasty habit of self-aggrandizement. He was the most arrogant typist who ever lived, but he could back up his arrogance, which makes it even more annoying. He once compared the release of this typing book to the freaking polio vaccine in importance. He thought that it was going to cause a revolution that would be as big as the polio vaccine was in the 50s. Does anybody remember Cortez Peters Jr. now, except like hardcore typists who have done historical research? Not really. Even though he was probably the best typist in history, this did not age forever, even though a lot of people, especially like in the Gen X generation, I think, grew up using his books in classes. The drills aren't bad. The drills in here are probably better than the drills in the other books, but they're not really inspiring either, and anything online would be just as good, so I wouldn't bother trying to track this down either. This one, Family the Hard Way, was a self-published book written by Joyce Tijan, the mother of Kevin Tijan, the Ultimate Typing Championship would-be semi-finalist who would have advanced if he knew that he had advanced, but he didn't check his email, and he didn't end up making it into the semifinal round, and he later committed suicide. His mother wrote a book about his life. I've talked about him in the autism video because he was autistic and had a lot of other problems as well. I'm dedicating the book to him, along with 2 other typists who have died. Carlo Parisi, the 2-time Intersteno Mother Tongue winner, and Reckful. I'm dedicating it to those 3 fallen typists. I got a lot of interesting information about Kevin's life from that. It wasn't very well edited because it was self-published. And that's understandable. I mean, my book isn't very well edited either. I want a professional editor. That's why I want a more conventional publisher. But I was glad to buy that book just to get some more information on Kevin for one of my biographical chapters about myself and my experiences in the Ultimate Typing Championship. Here are the actual contests used, the actual text used for the typing contests of the early 20th century. I've shown this book before. This has all the contests from 1915 to 1921. I think on a video by the end of this year, or maybe next month, well, maybe next month I'll do 1921. But if I do it this year, I'm going to type the actual text from 1920. And if I do it next year, it'll be 1921. 100 years after the contest was actually held, just to test my mettle against the typists of old. Now, it's very different typing today because we have backspace now and they didn't then. If you make an error, you're done. However, one thing that's different is you only get marked off once. If you make 2 errors in the same word, it only counts once. So it's like 10 fast fingers. That's how this was done, where the word is either right or wrong. It is the number of right words that is counted for you. Although you are also penalized for the wrong words. It's the number of right words minus 5 times the number of errors, and then in 1918 it became 10 times the number of errors. Now until 1924, these contests were scored based on the actual number of words typed instead of the number of characters divided by 5. The definition of a word was not redefined to be 5 keystrokes instead of actual words until 1924. So if I do the 1920 or 1921 contest, I'll have to keep that in mind. Obviously, you don't have to change paper. You don't have to do any mess with marginal stops and stuff. So obviously, I should be substantially faster, but I'm nowhere near as accurate as those people. Those people were often getting like an error a minute or less. Oftentimes it was like 30 errors for the entire hour, and that's just insane to me that they managed to do that sort of thing. William F. Oswald in the 1921 contest made 1 error over the entire hour, but he still lost because other typists were faster. But yeah, I do want to test my mettle at some of these. I have not read any of these yet because I want to save them for when I actually do them. But like giving you a sample here, I mean, the words were simple. They were shorter. You aren't having to type superfragilisticexpialidocious or the equivalent of the Ultimate Typing Championship text. These are all easy words to type, but still matching their accuracies would still be difficult, I think. You can buy almost all these old guides from the 1910s and 20s on eBay and on Amazon. There are some I haven't bought yet, but I want to buy them all eventually. This is a Veritas from 1926, and these have some nice pictures on them too. You can see here all the errors the champion typist made. You can see the complete results of the contest, which will be useful for my appendix section. And pictures of various typing champions, and all these books have those in them. This is Detours from 1927 in much better shape. You can see the cup they won. Oh, that was the school champion, I'm sorry, not the professional. Here's the 1928 one, which was held in Sacramento, the first one that was not held in New York. Here are like all the star typists all in one. And this one also has some great pictures of the event. And this one, Cactus Country from 1929, which was held in Toronto. This has the best collection of pictures I've found in any of them. And they're still in pretty good condition despite being nearly 100 years old. And you can find all of these for like $20 or less on eBay or Amazon or wherever. And that's all my typing books, although that's an awful lot of typing books for one person to own. My mom came out and I'm going to have to edit that out, and she might be coming out again to tell me to go to bed since it's after midnight. I have started working at home now, so that means I don't have to get ready until around 8:30 instead of around 7:30 as before. I'm glad I'm working at home now with all the COVID stuff, since we're having a bigger wave than the original wave. Oh yeah, these. I forgot. When I won that money in the clicking championship, I used it to basically buy two things. I bought another swivel chair after the cats destroyed the previous one, and I bought a lot of 30 Guinness Books of World Records for $50 or something insane like that. It ends up being a lot of clutter because I just wanted to verify that there weren't any records I didn't know about. And there weren't.